It would be a long time before I'd understand everything we'd been through on that glacier, that I'd experienced the greatest emptiness and the greatest strength there. Now I realize that living and loving while knowing all could be lost is the essence of the greatest aliveness.
Episode 1090, Emmy Zieman, Tap Dancing on Everest. Hi friends, thank you for joining the Adventure Sports Podcast. So the year was 1988, and the location was the East Face of Everest, and it had only been climbed once before. And our guest today is here to regale us with all the wonderful stories about what it was like to attempt that face. Emmy Zieman is here, and she has written a book called Tap Dancing on Everest. Now, we have to set it up a little bit. She was the only female on the expedition, and she was brought on as the medical person, though she was still in medical school. And it was it was an attempt of the East Face that is just something that people don't do from the Tibet side instead of from the Nepal side. And so, anyway, this is going to be a lot of fun. Mimi, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much, Kurt. I'm really excited to be here with you.
Yeah, so you're in Atlanta right now, but you just mentioned that you're headed to Colorado on a book tour. And then we found out we have more in common.
Yeah.
So where are you going on your book tour?
Well, I'm going to Aspen and to Vail. I fly in and out of Denver, but Colorado holds a huge place in my heart. It's where I discovered the mountains when I was a teenager in college. I went to Gothic, which is where the Rocky Mountain Biological Lab is, very close to where you live, just north of Crested Butte. And to this day, I think it's one of the most beautiful places on Earth. I've traveled a lot, but there's nothing like it. I went back there last summer for some book talks, and I still feel that way about it. Maybe because I grew so much when I was there. Maybe it's, emotional and spiritual beyond the physical. But I love your little corner of Earth.
Oh, thank you. It is very impacting. And for those who don't know, Gothic is just, I guess, north of Crested Butte, Colorado, which is where the ski resort is that is the claim to fame these days. But it was a mining town, and Gothic was as well. It's almost a ghost town now, but it's not because of the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory that's there. And now, did you work with the laboratory?
Yeah, so I went the first summer as a student, learning field biology, and I loved it so much I returned for a second summer right after I graduated college as a research assistant. So, it's a lab that studies ecology and animal behavior and acid rain and all kinds of things. And it's an important part of what got me to the Himalayas and just changed me. I was a New York City girl. So part of why I wrote my book and my story is it was sort of an unlikely trajectory from where I started to where I ended up being that medic at age 25 on the East Face in Tibet. But Gothic was a huge part of that story.
That's fascinating. So I think the mountains impact different people in different ways, Mimi. And I obviously love the mountains. My family took a trip to Colorado. I was from Oklahoma. But I was 10 years old when I first saw the Rockies. And I knew then that I was going to live here. And so it took me a long time, but I eventually got to move to Colorado and then now to Gunnison, which is south of Crested Butte. So the mountains impact people. And you mentioned spiritual impacts. So can you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, so the mountains, I instantly feel happier, lighter, more vibrant. I feel like it's my place. I feel, in touch with nature, which makes me more in touch with myself, in touch with the vastness of the world. And once I discovered that feeling, I sought it over and over again. So I did decide to go into medicine and not field biology, but before I started medical school, I went to hike in Nepal by myself, and I was 22, and I was a city girl, and I had to borrow a backpack. I didn't have money or come from a family with money. The backpack ended up being like one of those suitcases with straps.
Oh, no.
But I spent months hiking in Nepal, and it was towards the end of that trip that I met Everest climbers who later invited me to be their medic. But that's how it started.
Wow. So let's rewind a little bit. Why tap dancing? Back to New York.
Yes, so my first dream was to be a Broadway dancer, and I was a serious dancer in high school. And when I did go on the Everest expedition, I did pack my tap shoes. And there is people think it's just a metaphor, and it is a metaphor plus it's a true scene in the book where I tap dance on a boulder during our expedition on the East Face. Yeah.
That's great.
It's a moment of my joys coming together, my joy of dance, of being in the mountains, and of finally feeling okay in my skin and being myself.
Wow.
So that's why we used it for the title.
Well, there's something else we have in common. 1988 was the year that I moved to Colorado.
Oh.
So that's when my mountain adventures really began. And that's the year that you were tap dancing on Everest.
Yeah, that's right. And what's fun about the book is it's what we can call a throwback adventure at this point because it's before Everest was commercialized.
Right.
So I was gone for 4 months, and we saw no other Westerners while we were away. The climbers saw no other climbers on the mountain.
Wow.
Our team was small. It was just 4 climbers, a photographer and me. No use of supplemental oxygen, no use of Sherpa support. And, the East Face is still an extremely remote side of Everest. So to this day, only about 15 people have summited from the East Face versus over 12,000 from the other popular routes that you see on the news with all those long lines.
Right.
So it's kind of fun to think about adventure when it was more adventurous.
Well, is the East Face not climbed as often, extremely as often? Is that because of politics, or is that because of difficulty, or because of access, or all of the above?
Access and difficulty. So you have the
Okay.
same politics to reach the North Face route in Tibet, which is quite popular.
All right.
But the East Face is hard to get to. It's very sheer, steep, remote, has lots of thundering avalanches all day and all night.
Oh, goodness.
And here's an interesting, fun quote by George Mallory, who was the famous Everest explorer in the 1920s. He said, "Other men, less wise, might attempt this route if they would or may, but it was emphatically not for us." And that's what he said when he saw the East Face. And I guess a lot of people still feel that way.
Well, I get it. I have never climbed the really big expedition mountains, but I've climbed a lot of 14ers. And quite often, when I get to the top, I look off the other side and you go, not that side. And so, yes, it's amazing to look down something and think that others have come up it,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
It's impressive sometimes.
Yeah. And down is scarier anyway, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't mind rappelling. That's quick and easy. But
Yes.
if you have to down climb, yikes.
Yes.
That's rough. So you were a dancer in New York. You came to Gothic and fell in love with the mountains. You were backpacking in Nepal, and you met the climbers who invited you along on the expedition. So
Yeah.
that's how this came together.
Yeah, I was 22 at the time and about to start medical school. And the way I describe it in the book is, in a plucky move that surprised even me, I said, "Well, if you need a doctor on your next expedition, call me." I hadn't even started med school. And the thing is, that I got the invitation 1 year later. So how was I going to do that? I was still in med school. I didn't know anything. And they were inviting me for an expedition that would happen at the end of my 3rd year of med school. And the thing is, though, I could not resist that. When else was I going to get an opportunity like that?
Right.
I had to make it happen.
So how did you talk the school into it?
Well, that's a funny scene in the book. Basically, the expedition leader, Robert Anderson, was a creative director in an advertising agency. So he coached me. You know, he said, heavyweights like big plans. You just go in there and tell them how it's going to be good for the school.
Yes.
And that's what I did. And then as soon as they agreed, I was terrified and thinking, what the hell am I doing? This is a ridiculous idea. I can't do this. I was in the Bronx of New York City, the heart of the crack epidemic and gunshot wounds on Saturday nights. I wasn't in Colorado learning wilderness medicine.
Oh, that's really, really fun. So did you take outdoor class type preparation? I mean, you know, there's the wilderness first responder classes that we have now, and there's WUFA and WOOFER and, you know, that sort of preparation. Was there something parallel to that then that you could work into?
No, that's the point. There was nothing back then. So what really saved me was when I was hiking in Nepal, I did know I was going to medical school, so I stopped at the high altitude medicine clinic up in, I think it was near Farache in Nepal. I don't remember the exact village. And I met the doctor there, and we talked, and I wrote his name down and all of that, never thinking, you know, I did think, well, this would be fun. Maybe I could do this some point. But when I was invited on the team, I wrote him immediately to ask for advice, and it turned out he was preparing for an expedition up Makalu, which is the fifth highest mountain in the world. And so he shared all of his expedition medicine lists of everything I needed to take, and how to prepare, and that was kind of the biggest help that I had.
Wow. Isn't it fun the way that these things come together?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a juxtaposition, and tap dancing on Everest kind of captures that, right? For a Bronx girl to be on Everest, being the medical person without a medical degree, but it's a beautiful story. So how did the expedition go?
Well, and that's why I wrote it, because I felt like the subtitle is A Young Doctor's Unlikely Adventure, but the whole point of unlikeliness is that we can do a lot of unlikely things that we don't think we're the best person for, we're not ready for, capable, you know, other people can do better. So I talk a lot about my self-doubt in the book. Okay, how did it go? We had a lot of setbacks and obstacles as these things go and happen. And like I said, I was away for 4 months. I left New York in February and returned in June. And we did experience trauma on the mountain. That was another reason I wrote the story, because I think we're used to mountaineering stories and Everest stories as focusing on the climber, who's the real hero of the story. They attempt something amazing, and they have to get through a lot to go up and down the mountain. And I wrote my story because it's about someone in the background, right? The medic, the only woman. But that person went through a lot, especially when we had trauma. And I wanted to write that less told story and what that was like. So that was my motivation now, so many decades later.
How did it change you?
It changed. I certainly developed a stronger sense of self, although I did that also by trekking alone in Nepal. So both of those experiences, which is also in the book, it led me to a greater trust in myself because I got through what we went through. And in others, because my teammates were amazing and helped each other in difficult times. Like, it was my job to help them when they were hurt and injured, but the other teammates really stepped in, and we bonded in an unusual way, where to this day, even though they've become adventurers that have continued to do many expeditions, this particular experience really, really bonded us. And I think it's partly because we came together so much for each other. We were such a small team. And, there was no one else to rely on. There was no chance for rescue in Tibet at that point. And so I'm hemming a little. I'm not telling you all the details because I don't always reveal
It's
them.
in the book.
But we did have trauma. And the book opens with 3 climbers missing on the mountain. And we thought there were no chance that they could still be alive or survive at that point without supplemental oxygen.
Wow.
So I do think there's value in taking on these experiences where you have to face fear and reach deep inside yourself. You get to know parts of yourself that you wouldn't reach otherwise. And that doesn't have to be in Everest or in the mountains or as one of your last guests running 100-mile races and stuff. I think that we have challenges every day where we have fear and we don't think maybe we can get through it. And there's so much more I think that we're capable of.
If you never stretch beyond what you can do, you'll never find out what you're capable of doing.
Exactly.
Right. And we want to do that in a way that's reasonable and safe and exciting
Right.
and fun. But in retrospect, I just heard you say I think we should take on these big challenges. But in retrospect, are some challenges a little too risky, a little too big?
Well, yeah, that's for each person to decide. Absolutely. I had to go through that. I had to go through thinking I may not come back from this trip, right? I had to go through, and I was young, so that plays into the equation.
Sure.
But, what we did was pretty risky. So you can say maybe it was too much. But I really think that is an individual decision for each person. If you talk to our climbers, they will talk about calculated risk. They knew what they were capable of or not capable of,
Sure.
And in any of these kinds of situations, luck will play a part, You could be lucky or unlucky.
Right.
And I think that we have to, just make those as individual decisions, which, I am a physician and the same thing happens in medicine. It's so much about risk and, whether you're choosing a certain treatment plan or medication, there's a risk-benefit analysis to everything. And it's
Right.
very individualized.
I personally know that I've grown a lot by wilderness adventure. It's a lot of who I know myself to be now, right? I identify with that. And it has helped me in everyday life. Sometimes it helps me when times get really tough and I just need to persevere. But at other times, I think it's just having the memories of the amazing experiences that can be, I don't know, like old friends that come alongside you when you need them. But I'm curious, in the medical profession, how did this trip, have there been times when you've thought, well, when I was in Tibet, when I was on Everest, and that it fortified you?
Well, when I got back, the one thing that I was extremely grateful for was having colleagues, right? And ceilings to work under ceilings versus snow falling on me.
Right.
But colleagues to ask questions and work with, versus being alone. I think, it's a long list of experiences that make you grow and give you fortitude. And this was one of them. When I wrote the book, I experienced a lot of the same fears and self-doubts as I did at Everest, which I was writing about, right? Who am I to do this? Who am I to write a book? Who would want to read this? Because I was like, who am I to be a doctor on Everest, right? But yeah, I think it's all, flexing that courage muscle. Once you do it once, and then second time, and then a third time, and you keep going, it definitely accumulates over time. The end of in my epilogue, I talk about right after residency, I went to work in Guam, and
Oh, wow.
and I was alone there again. I wasn't expecting that. I guess some of my decisions were impulsive, but it was another growing experience. I had to figure things out on my own, and
Well, and it seems to have worked for you, Emmy. I mean, you just recently got the Georgia Author of the Year for Memoir Award. Congratulations.
thank
So
you.
I think the risk of writing the book has paid off. People are saying, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and it was hard. None of these things were easy for me. They were really, really hard. I mean, writing, I had to learn craft and study and try to make it a good book. Nothing about that was easy. It's great to have the reward at the end. The reward is connecting with readers. To hear that people valued it or got something out of the story, that's what's amazing about writing.
So, what was your motivation for the book besides sharing your amazing story? What is it you're trying to communicate to the reader?
Definitely that we're all capable of more than we think we are. Like I said, I was very honest about my self-doubt. And so to me, being empowering to other people is the main reason I wrote the book. And to show that we can all do unlikely things like I did.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. I love that theme. It's the theme of the Adventure Sports podcast, really. That by taking on a challenge, we learn more about ourselves and we grow and we have more success. And success doesn't necessarily mean money or fame or any of the things that sometimes we think of. Success is more along the lines of joy.
Exactly. And asking where, like I said, the reason I went to the mountains, that's where I felt the most myself, the most joy. I was following my gut instinct to a place where I felt happy. I was following curiosity, and everyone can do that. One thing that was interesting to me, in one of my earlier book talks, someone said, "What if you've never felt a gut instinct?" And I was taken aback. I was taken aback because a lot of my book is about being present in the body too, because I feel I am someone who's too much in their head. But if I'm hiking or dancing, I feel more in my body and more in tune. And that was new to me to hear that some people can't connect to gut instincts, for example. But I think our bodies are very, very wise. And if we can connect more, which I do think nature helps us do that,
Yes.
that can help us be in happier places. And then I learned these interesting stats, like your brain receives 11 million bits of information a second.
Oh, wow.
And only 40 bits around are your conscious brain. So your body's unconscious, to me, knows a lot that we don't know. Right? For me, my journey was often following where I felt happy. That's like following a calling or my body or a gut instinct. A notion that might seem, silly on the surface. But I think there's value in that.
I've learned so much value in that, and I still won't claim to be good at it, but there is a season of my life as a young man that I really had to quit feeling emotion. And I think that adventure sports help to draw that out in part. But learning to feel what you feel and what your body is trying to tell you, and it's not always pain or pleasure. I mean, your body might be giving you that gut signal that's hard to really explain. But I've interviewed a lot of explorers over the years, and I remember one fellow who just said, Sometimes you come to a decision point and you don't have enough information to make a logical decision. And he says, I look down the trail to the left, I close my eyes, and I imagine what it feels like. And then I look down the trail to the right, and I close my eyes, and I imagine what it feels like. He says, and then I follow that feeling.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And I just thought, wow. And my mind has a hard time computing with that, because I'm more likely to say, where's my map? And of course, he's talking about instances when you don't have a map for the decision you're trying to make, right? But he said that had worked very, very well for him. And there is something to that, Mimi. I don't really understand what that is.
I agree, because I think your body is storing memories and information that you might not have access to, but it has a certain wisdom. And when you're listening to it, you're following that. And, when I was in the Rocky Mountain how did I even decide to go to Nepal? When I was in the Rocky Mountain Biological Lab, one night, a researcher gave a slideshow on his research on acid rain in Tibet.
Wow.
And I was sitting in the audience, and I said, I want to go there. I'm going to go there. It was totally random. It was a gut feeling I had. Tibet was closed to foreigners at the time, so I ended up in Nepal, and that was my backpacking trip in Nepal. But it was the willingness to follow that notion or gut instinct that, yeah, that's what you actually should be doing. It's not just a crazy idea that you should say, well, that's a nice idea, but I'm not going to do that. That doesn't make any sense. It's not practical. I don't have the money, and all the other reasons.
I want to point out to everyone, you've already said that you didn't come from a wealthy background. You said that you followed your gut and ended up in Nepal. You ended up ultimately in Tibet. You still became a doctor. Most people would think it's an either or, right? It's like, there's no way I could do all of this. I can't do it. But you did it. You did both. You did all of the above. What's that about?
Well, I am willing to work hard, for good or for bad. So the other thing I write about in the book is I struggled in medical school because it's such a box. You have to conform to the medical school hierarchy. I had just been hiking Nepal. All of a sudden, I'm under fluorescent lights in the cadaver lab. I was not happy. I wanted to quit. But I persisted. And even throughout my career, I had to pivot many times because I didn't feel that things were right or aligning with my soul or my values or this and that. But when I listen to myself and I pivot, it's good. And, now I'm happy because I mostly use my voice for reproductive rights advocacy, which sort of my whole career sort of pointed in that direction too. I'm an OBGYN. So I don't know, but there are always trade-offs to your point. I would have loved to just continue the adventure life, but I was committed to start medical school,
Right.
And then when the expedition happened, I was already in medical school, and then I had a lot of loans that I needed to repay. I was invited on some other expeditions. I couldn't do that. How was I going to repay my loans? But, you make it work, and you try to be true to your values as you go along.
For those people who say, I've never had that gut feeling, I don't really have great intuition, I don't know what instinct feels like, can you describe it? What that feels like to you?
It sounds really trite because I do feel it in my gut. And I've done a little research in this, and not everyone feels it in their gut. Like, I mean my physical stomach area. Apparently people feel that instinct in different parts of your body. To me, it feels like that word that's a calling. It's a drawing to something. Like, I'm drawn to something, whether it's an idea or curiosity or a place. And I think that's important too, because when you make these, to your point, decisions that involve risk, I don't think they're worthwhile if it's not like a passion of yours or something that's going to make you happy or fulfilled in some way. Yes. Like, you shouldn't do it just to check off a box. Like, now I ran a marathon. Like, I'm, But like if you're drawn to it for a reason, does that make sense?
I think it does make sense. Another way that I've said it is that when you find out what it is you value, which is a word you just used, right? You believe in that it's worthwhile, and then you pour yourself into something in a way that not only aligns with your values, but also helps other people.
Yeah.
That gives back on some level. I think that that's a great source of meaning and joy and obviously self-actualization and all those sorts of things. But people may ask what the meaning of life is, and I respond, that's the wrong question. It's not what is the meaning of life, it's what gives life meaning for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we find that cerebrally. I think we have to listen to our gut and say, you know, I am pulled toward, like I mentioned to you, I came to the Rockies for the first time when I was 10. And at that point in my life, I felt like I had come home for the first time and I knew where I had to be.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
so, you know, that I moved back to Colorado and I've claimed this as my space ever since. I think there's something to that. And it's
I
not for
do
everyone.
too. And that's a great way of putting it. And, you know, when we're talking about doing hard things and we want to quit, which I mentioned, I wanted to quit med school. I mean, expeditioning was hard. I have a line in my book, you know, quitting would be reserved for things that didn't align with my heart and soul. Because I have quit certain jobs in my medical career and stuff
Right.
to pivot, to find what's feeding my true purpose, you know, better than what I'm doing now. If what you're doing is feeding your purpose, then it's worth it to work through the hard times, I
That's
think.
where you persevere.
Yeah.
Okay, so on your expedition to Everest, were there times that you or the team, you were saying, we should just quit now? We should get out.
We never talked about quitting, but we were almost not going to even get to base camp. It was supposed to be a 5-day trek, and we were stuck by storms in one camp for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So we had really, really bad weather the whole expedition with
helps.
snowstorms. And so we didn't know if we would make it. Our expedition leader also had a great quote at one point. I can't say it verbatim, but you know, he wanted to do this crazy thing, which was try a new route on the East Face. So the East Face had only been climbed once before, but yet he
Right.
wanted a new route. And he said, you know, when you do something new like that, you just don't even know if it can be done. But that's where the excitement lies. You might fail. I mean, there's a good chance you're going to fail, so you have to accept that. But, you know, the excitement of doing uncharted territory is amazing. So we were kind of in uncharted territory for a lot of it. So we really, day to day, had no idea if what we were going to do, you know, going to try to do would work in any way. I had no opportunity to quit. Like, I was there for the long haul. I kept worrying, you know, because of our delays that I would be late getting back from medical school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was really worried about that, but there was nothing, I mean, there was no way I was leaving or quitting. Like, I was there.
Yeah, well, you had to be.
Yeah,
You probably didn't have a real choice, but you were also committed to the expedition, to the
I
team,
had
and
no
to your
choice.
responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, and I was committed, yes.
Was there a time in the expedition where you feared for your life, where you thought, we may not get out of this?
There was only one night I was afraid for my own life, but I was deathly afraid for the climbers all the
Yes.
time. Yeah, we were camped on this steep slope with heavy wet snow that could avalanche. And there's a chapter in my book called How to Ride an Avalanche, because my tent mate said, like, hey, let's run through an avalanche drill because it might avalanche tonight on this
It'll
slope.
help you sleep.
Yeah. So that was really the only night where I think I was afraid for myself, but I was afraid for them all the time.
Wow. I don't know how many people, I think most people have close calls, but when you find yourself coming out the other side of a harrowing experience and you're still alive and there's a new day and a new dawn and a new, I think somehow that, and I'm not trying to encourage people to take unnecessary risks.
Right.
But I do think that when you come out of that sort of an experience, there's something about it that gives life itself more value. Maybe it builds an appreciation for the opportunity of what could lie ahead.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what's your next big adventure?
It's probably writing related, Now that I've written a play also, so I've written this memoir, I've written a play, I'm writing poetry, and I hope to maybe write a novel. So now my
Yay.
adventures are that. We did just come back from hiking in Norway, so yes, I still love to hike and go. We were in Uzbekistan this year, so we still like to travel and see the world. That will always be important to me. And to stretch myself. Look, I have bad knees at this point, but I'm not going to miss out. I'm just determined. And thank God I went hiking and felt pretty good the whole time. I didn't know if I would, but I was willing to take that chance. I do think we have to keep moving as we get older, for sure. Movement is so important to health. To your point, you want it to be safe, whatever, under doctor supervision or whatever. But luckily, my doctors say pain is no problem. It's not going to kill you. So if you have a little pain I have a little pain in my knee joints, I can work through that.
There comes a point where a little is too much.
Absolutely. And
you don't want to cause injury, but the question,
Right.
I guess, is what's the difference? And there's a metaphor here too, but how much pain is okay and how much pain is too much?
Yeah, and that's something, that I think imaging helps to know the actual state of your joints, right? Like
Right.
mine are okay at this point to keep going.
Right.
But yeah, I will advocate for doctor supervision and for, doing what they sanctioned.
Well, what is the name of your play?
Oh, my play is called The Post Row Monologues. And it was interesting because it felt like a real moment of inspiration to combine my medical work as an OBGYN and my writing work. I never planned to write a play, and it came out of wanting to do just a one night way to educate the community as to what life would be like after the Supreme Court Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade. But it became a real play that other people wanted to put on. So it's had a couple of performances, and that was a really interesting journey, especially when I got to New York. It was just a one night thing, but with 15 Broadway performers, and I felt like, oh, this is kind of like a full circle with my dream to be a Broadway dancer, because, I'm working with people on stage, and yeah, so that was exciting and unexpected too. So again, just something with following curiosity and trying something, even if your voice in your head is saying, "Who are you to write a play?" You don't know anything about that.
Well, you're a great example of what can happen when you do follow your interests and your values and how that can impact your life. I mean, everybody has a variety of experiences, but what I'm hearing from you is that you've had some, I don't know, some true juxtapositions, right? And that your life is more interesting for having paid attention to those.
Yeah, Paying attention to opportunities the universe is offering you and following your curiosities and not letting what they call, I hope this isn't bad to say, what people call the asshole between your ears, who's going to try to tell you that all of your ideas are crazy, you're
Right.
not good enough. Because that voice is pretty strong in my head. But
But you overcame it over and over and over again.
yeah, is willing to take that risk of putting yourself out there and at risk of judgment and failure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, give us some advice, or at least an example. There are people out there who have the dream. They have the pulling in their gut. They're like, this is what, but I don't have the time. I don't have the experience. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to start. I don't know where I'll end up. I don't know if the risk is too much. What do you say to that person?
I say you probably won't have all those answers, but if you really want to do it, it's worth a try. Look, when I went to Nepal at 22, I couldn't even find anyone in my New York circles who had been there.
Yeah.
And this is before the internet. I went to the bookstore. I finally tracked down a friend of a friend who lived in Chicago who had been there, to get advice. Nowadays, you have the whole internet. I mean,
Sure.
you have access to all the knowledge in the world to make your decisions. And I think that you can often make them without optimal resources, and like I had to borrow not only a backpack, I was into photography, so I had bought a camera lens, but I didn't have money for a camera body. I borrowed the body. Like you can make do with
Right.
with less, and same with writing. I mean, I literally started from scratch. But I became so determined. I took 1,000,000 classes. I read craft books. I devoted myself to it. And I didn't know that it would ever be published. But it became like once I started, I was not going to quit because that felt like a real purpose.
Yeah. How did you find the time? Doctors are busy people.
No, I was very lucky because it actually happened. I had a very intense job and I had to resign spontaneously. And I was driving home like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I had been traveling to 3 cities a week. I had been doing all this stuff.
Wow.
Oh my God. The next morning I went to my computer and started writing. I didn't plan to write the book. I just let it start to pour out of me. So I wasn't actually doing doctoring at that point. I could devote myself 100% to writing. But I didn't plan it. I just let it happen and followed it. And similarly, I always thought, okay, I have a great Everest story. I'm going to tell that story. But once I started writing, all this family stuff came out on the page. And I was like, what is this? I never planned to write about my family. And then I said, this is part of the story. I have to figure that out. What is the story? Then it became more about how did that girl who was born to parents who came off the ship in New York. My father was a Holocaust survivor. I was raised in an Orthodox Jewish community. How did that girl end up on Everest? So the family became the story also. But none of that was planned. I had to just let it happen.
My sister's is a writer, and she recounted to me one day that she was writing and she was crying, and her husband says, "What's going on?" She goes, "I didn't know that he had to die." But these things happen as you explore an idea deeply. Then it takes you places you did not anticipate.
Yeah, which
Right?
is actually
and that's what you're saying about your book.
Yeah. And that's the exciting part of writing is letting the story carry you. Not planning everything, which is kind of what we've been talking about life, right?
Yes.
Not to plan
yes.
everything and succumb a little.
Oh, that's excellent. I dare everyone out there to look at a map and dream a little bit and ask yourself the question, what does it look like in this place? Put your finger on the map and then look at other maps. But once you've done that, the next step is to go and see. And it might not be that you're going to go to Nepal or Tibet or wherever the faraway dream place is right now, but you can go to a wild place near the city where you live.
Mm-hmm.
And Mimi, this last year, got in a little bit of a rut, and I was just kind of like, golly, this is not really fun. And then I stopped and I said, all I have to do is go, because when you go, you see and you experience, and your life gets richer. But if you sit here and say, what am I going to do, or you sit there and, doom scroll on your phone, or whatever the case may be, you don't have those life experiences. So when you're in that moment where you're like, I actually have an extra hour and a half right now, and I don't know what to do with myself, then go.
Yeah, great advice.
You won't make a memory otherwise.
And if go means going in nature, the answers may come to you, and it's
Yeah.
rejuvenating, you know.
Absolutely.
And it connects you with yourself and the greater world, and maybe you connect with a greater purpose. And with today's mental health problems, I think, to your point, stopping to doom scroll and getting out more is good for all of us.
So, Mimi, do you have a passage in your book, a paragraph that you would be willing to read to us?
Oh, you didn't ask me to prepare that.
No, I did not. So this is really off the cuff.
It would be a long time before I'd understand everything we'd been through on that glacier, that I'd experienced the greatest emptiness and the greatest strength there. Now I realize that living and loving while knowing all could be lost is the essence of the greatest aliveness.
Wow. I think that summarizes everything that we just talked about. That's fantastic. And well written as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a lot of fun. Well, what would you want people to know or to think about as they consider their own lives and their own adventures?
Mostly that they're capable of more than they think they are. And in particular, I think women underestimate themselves.
Mm.
And that when you do try new things, stretch out of your comfort zone, face fears, face your self-doubt, you'll grow. You may not always have success, to your point. You mentioned that. We may fail, but we will definitely grow.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, how can people learn more about your book, find your book, get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me through my website, which is mimiziemanmd.com. And my book is, on all the online sites. There are links to buy it on my website. And it's, on bookshop.org and amazon.com and all those places. And I'll be in your neck of the woods in Colorado giving some book talks at the end of the month.
In Aspen and in Vail.
Yeah, I'll be in Aspen on July 29th and Vail on July 30th.
Oh, that'll be fun. And welcome back to Colorado.
Yeah, thanks. I can't wait.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. So the name of the book is Tap Dancing on Everest. And Mimi Zieman, that's ZIEMANMD, is the website. And will you relate to us, to close this out, will you just tell us a story, something from your expedition that impacted you, that you draw from time to time?
There were so many potential titles, and now that we chose tap dancing, I think of that moment as just being a moment when I was fully myself, because I was kind of in the shadow of the men. I wasn't a climber. I didn't have much of a voice to what we were doing. And I look back at that moment of being able to be myself in front of them and to bring what I had to the team, which was singing Broadway show tunes and tap
On Everest.
dancing, as something valuable. And again, we judge ourselves so harshly. Like, what am I bringing to this team or whatever? So, yeah, I look at that as a moment to remind me of what it feels like when you are comfortable in your skin and really letting other people see you, which is hard, which is a really hard
Yes.
thing to do. So, so one of the climbers was so generous and kind this year because we had been texting and he said, that was the best day of the trip. I think you completing a new route on Everest was probably your best, accomplishment, but that was very kind of him to say.
Oh, that's really, really fun. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and all the encouragement to everyone, that there's a reason to get out there and to try these things and to follow your heart and your gut. So, Mimi, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kurt. It was really great to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you, too. And for all the viewers and listeners out there, do get out there and have some fun, but realize that there's a reason for it. It does make life better. Take care.